الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنة إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. Okay, in our previous session we completed the practical for Dawah and the method of giving Dawah to the atheists. Basically, we looked at their arguments and how do we respond to their arguments. The philosophy or the understanding that they have for their belief. Now, in terms of general dawah for atheists, I would advise that you find out why that person became an atheist, because we have to keep in mind that atheism is an abnormality. It is an abnormality. So for a person to become an atheist, something must have happened in his or her life, or they were raised by atheists who something happened in their lives. The norm is for people to grow up believing in God. This is the norm, right? We talked about that earlier. That's the norm for humankind. So when you find somebody who doesn't believe in God, then we have to treat this person as an abnormal person, in which case you need to find out what made him or her that way. So you ask them, why don't you believe in God? If they say, well, all this tragedy in the world, this is general information. There's something more specific. Okay, leave that aside. But why don't you believe in God personally? So when you find out what was actually behind their disbelief, what led them into disbelief, then you can try to deal with that. Then you can deal with that actual problem. And in most cases, it is some tragedy, as I've mentioned before, some tragedy they had in life which they could not find an explanation for. That is the most common occurrence. Somebody like Stephen Hawkins, this British mathematician, genius, sitting in the seat for mathematics at Oxford, an ancient seat, This individual, in his early years, he was raised as a Christian, believing in God, etc. And then his genius came out. He, became a big figure in his teens, his late teens. Then he started to suffer from this spinal disease, which he started to lose control over his limbs. His body was crumbling within itself, till it led him to that position where he is moved around on a electric wheelchair. He can't even speak. Somebody has to punch out sounds for him to be able to speak. And after this happened to him, and he came to India, they took him around India. He looked at different parts of India, and he saw 1 billion people living here. People who were living lives which were, in his view, of no consequence. They were born, they grew up, they procreated, and they died. Finish. They added nothing to human civilization and knowledge, etc. They were just like ants, but they were healthy. So this was something which struck him. Why? I, who have so much to add to civilization, to benefit humankind, I am in this state. And these people who have nothing, but they're in good health. Right? There can't be a God. There's no reason for this. I'm the one who should be healthy and good, you know. They who have nothing to offer, okay, let them be crippled like me. See, so not being able to explain and to understand why he is in this state, tragedy, led him to atheism. He wrote his book on the history of time, you know, and so on and so forth. Complete atheism. Later on, his nurse fell in love with him, and he fell in love with his nurse. He divorced his wife, married his nurse. Love came into his life. Then he started to believe in God again. You see his writings change. You know? Is this how people are? This is how people are. You know, when there's tragedy, you can't explain it, you resort to atheism. When life goes well, things are good, okay, there's a God. I found love. You know, so like Hawkins, if you go into different people's lives, you will find that the reason for their atheism is tragedy. This is the most common one. Or, as I said, it could be that they were raised by parents who were themselves atheists, who became atheists as a result of some tragedy in their lives. Or their parents, you know, maybe a couple of generations of atheists. That could be too. But usually this disease, and really it is a very grave disease, for a person to deny God's existence. That is a very grave disease. For a person, for that to happen, there is usually a cause. There's usually a cause. And even the person who was raised as an atheist by his parents or her parents, many times they find Islam. Many times, or they find belief in God, you know. If they end up in science, etc., you'll find actually surveys done amongst the scientists. The vast majority of them believe in God in the West, which we think of as a secular, atheistic type society. The majority of scientists, biologists, you know, astronomers, chemists, geologists, they believe in God. Where you find the disbelievers are in psychology, sociology. This is where the disbelievers dominate. You find most of them are atheists and this. But those who are in science, because science shows them really what is man in relationship to this creation. They know when they get up behind a telescope and they look out into the universe, it humbles them. There's got to be a God. And there's actually an issue of Time magazine. For those of you that are involved in Dawah and dealing with science, it's good to get that issue of Time magazine, which focuses on, you know, believers among the scientists. You know, that science leads to God. Something I've forgotten the exact title. If you email me and you need the exact title, because of course it will be in the archives. You can always look it up. But there's very good articles, and they have different scientists explaining why they believe in God. Nuclear scientists, others, you know, are talking about different issues and different aspects of science which indicate, no doubt, there has to be a God. You know, so it's a very good article. If you need the title, as I said, of the issue, email me and I'll get it to you. I've saved it. You know, it's very, very interesting. Huh? Email address bilal17@bilalphilips.com. Bilal17 BILAL @bilalphilips.com. Philips is one L, PHILIPS. Huh? Okay. Now we're going to shift over to the practical. We go back into a practical for atheism and deism. Now, the people who I want to answer this time are people who did not answer in the previous practical. I want a new set of people altogether. Okay? So who is first from among the brothers? Who is the first from among the brothers? First question. Who is the first among the sisters? Please pass the microphone to one of the sisters who did not answer last time. First question. What would be your response to atheists who say that it is illogical to believe in God?
I would say that it is logical to believe in God and illogical to disbelieve in God. I would show them that the majority of the world believes in God. I would prove to them that...
Okay, for this point. Can we demonstrate that it is logical to believe in God because the majority of the world believes in God? That's not our argument for the logic. What is the main point that we use to prove that it is logical?
Every design must have a designer.
No, that is the proof itself. But what is the argument, historical argument that we use?
Creator.
No. Huh? The Greeks. This is our quick answer.
Greeks were the founder of logic.
Yes. Not just that the Greeks were the founder of logic, but that Aristotle and Plato
proved the existence of God.
They proved the existence of God logically. So were the belief in God illogical, it wouldn't make sense that the founders of logic proved God's existence logically. Okay, so that was our quick answer. So our basic answer is to turn the issue around, to tell them, no, it is not illogical. In fact, it is logical. And it is the disbelief in God which is illogical. You know, they say, well, why are you saying that? Well, we say because the founders of logic, they said that there must be a God, proving it logically. Furthermore, the fact that your disbelief in God is illogical, how would you show them that disbelief in God is illogical?
I would explain to them the concept of creator. For every creation there must be a creator.
Okay, how would you explain that?
Design must have a designer.
Okay, through these design indicating the designer, I mean that is a logical conclusion for human beings. So to say that design doesn't indicate a designer must be illogical. So that's where we can easily show the issue of logic, because common sense tells us that if something has a pattern, something had to have made that pattern. That's common sense. That's our life experience. So to conclude that the whole thing had a designer to design these patterns is reasonable and logical. To conclude that it has no designer, that it's all by accident, that is illogical. Okay, good. Inshallah. Next, from the sisters. Sister has the microphone. Okay. Who hasn't answered before?
Yes. I haven't answered.
Okay. If an atheist said to you, what makes you so sure there is a God? How would you respond?
What about how we can we could not have created ourselves, and if we had to create ourselves, we should have been nothing, and nothing comes from nothing creates nothing. So we have to be created by something uncreated. So
okay, so we're saying that you would bring the Quranic argument,
yeah,
that we were not created by nothing or from nothing, and we didn't create ourselves, right? He's asking, what makes you so sure there is a God? So you would ask them, were you created from nothing? Did nothing create you? Of course they say, no, obviously I had to be created from something.
I mean, it's not just you who have been created. There are so many other things also.
No, but if the person said, I created myself, I mean,
how can it be? Do you have any proof? Like,
no, what we say to them is, okay, if you created yourself, it means that you had to not exist.
Okay.
Right? You had to first not exist. So when you were not in existence, how can you bring what is not in existence into existence? Not possible. That is illogical.
Well, can we say create one more?
Create one more? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. On to the brothers. Next. Who has not answered before, huh? Sometimes an atheist may say, if there is a God, why is there suffering in this world? What would your answer be to that?
I will give him the evidence from the Quran that these are the signs, the calamities befall us because they make us to think that there is a God. So just to remind us, Allah shows His signs.
Just to remind us,
Is that right?
Allah shows His signs. So He puts people under all this suffering just to remind us.
No, if you are not obedient to Him, then to let us make on the straight path, bring us on the straight path, He shows it by giving some calamities.
Well, for the atheist, he would say, couldn't He have done it another way? Rather than putting suffering on little children and innocent people just to make the rest of us know?
Because till then you don't lose something from you.
No, the safe way for this issue, right, is to go into the issue of evil, right? If there is a God, why is there suffering in this world? We're talking about your issue is here of evil, harm. We explained to him that what we perceive as evil and harm is relative to our perception. We might see something as evil and harm, but there's actually some good behind it. Right? Don't jump straight into explain that it is calamity to remind. And of course, we believe this. This is part of the purpose of calamities. But you're going into details. Better to give the general principle first. General principle that what you perceive as suffering, like the child who perceives the dentist's needle or the doctor's injection as suffering, right, is really for something good. So you just give that general. If now he presses the point and wants to know more details, okay, I can understand in the case of the child, and in the case of the individual. But what about the group of people? Then you give him the same principle. Because of the fact that you can't see the good, the benefit that is from that group of people suffering, does it mean that there is no benefit? See, rather than try to get into the details, as I said, from our side, because we have already believed and understood and accepted that whatever calamity comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on us is for our betterment, we can now see the different ways that it is for our betterment. It is as a reminder, it is as so on, so on, so forth. That's for us. That's discussion amongst the believers. When you're dealing with the disbelievers, you can't go into that. You have to just stay with the fundamentals. If they can grasp, because that's what you want them to grasp, is the principle. So the first principle is to clarify that
Evil.
About evil.
Yeah, evil and harm, that it is relative to our perception. And you give them the easy example, like the child. The child can't see that the needle is good for him. But you as an adult can see it. So it's relative evil here, isn't it? That's clearly relative evil, right? So similarly, when you see that tragedy or whatever, with your limited foresight, you can't see it except as evil. But
There is good.
God, whose knowledge of all things is greater, knows that it is for a good purpose. Maybe you'll find out later on, you deal with it in this way. Okay? On to the sisters. Sister who hasn't answered. Some atheists argue that this world works fine without having to imagine a God. What answer would you give them?
Can you repeat the question?
Some atheists argue that this world works fine without having to imagine a God. What answer would you give them?
I can give an example of a school. Like when children comes, when you don't tell them how they behave, I mean, for example, it's like, when if you don't have a teacher there who to instruct them, you have to be seated here around this time, and then there'll be a total confusion. I mean, the children, they'll be on their own, so there's no one to guide them. So each person will be doing what they want. So you need somebody to guide you, who knows, and only a creator can guide you.
Okay,
Control.
if you're using the school example, we could say that the children playing in the playground, right? They came to school and they played in the playground. For them, school was fine. Playing in the playground. Enjoyable. It was fine. But is that what they're supposed to do at school? No. So the fact that the world seems to be going fine without having to imagine a God, does that mean that the world is really going fine? See, this was the point. We're dealing again with relative good. What may appear good to you as an atheist, you think the world is fine without having to think about a God. That doesn't necessarily mean it is really fine. Right? So, without God prescribing for us how this world is supposed to be, then the likelihood is that we're not going to be doing what we should be doing here. That's the point. Okay? So you use your school example. Better to use the children in the playground, or without the teacher, you could say in the classroom. They may be having a good time, jumping up and down on the desks and throwing chalk at each other. It's fun. It's going fine. You don't have to think about the teacher. Or in the playground, you don't have to think about why you're here at school. But will they fulfill what they were in school for? No. They will not. You need to have that teacher there. You need to have instructions what to do in the school. So that would be our answer. Shukran, sister. One of the brothers who hasn't answered. Atheists occasionally claim that the world and its constituents are uncreated. It always existed. This was Hawkins' book on the origin of time, or the history of time. That's what he was claiming in it. How would you refute this claim?
Can I have the question once again?
If an atheist claims that the world and its constituents, what is made up of, are uncreated, it always existed, how would you refute this claim?
I'll give you the example of a man walking on a beach. He sees a footprint in front of him. He cannot say that this is because of sand and water mixing and becoming a footprint. This is because someone has walked in front of him that it has become a footprint. So just like that, nothing cannot come to this world without being created. So everything is created.
Well, I don't think that is the answer. I mean, what you said is a correct statement, but it's not the answer to that question or that challenge. If it is uncreated, meaning it was always there, it has no beginning, that's what you're dealing with. When they say it's uncreated, It means it had no beginning. So how do we respond to the claim that this world had no beginning?
You can give him the example. If it doesn't have a beginning, then we can ask him, if you see anything which has been produced, you can see a designer for it. Nothing just comes in front of you by falling in front of him. For example, if you see a mic in front of me, it did not come falling in front of me. You can just give him an example. So it has been created by somebody and placed here. So this is how world, which is so complex, it has all complex things. It cannot be created as such and cannot come with an explosion or be like that for a long time. It has to be created by a creator.
See, you're still dealing with the issue of accident or design. You know, you're not dealing with things being in existence without a creator. It is always there. You still haven't dealt with the question. You have an answer to this one? Please.
Maybe we can give the example of taking different colors of paint and put it in a bucket and trying to throw on an empty wall. And if you think you can create the painting of Mona Lisa, it's not going to come even if you try a million times.
No, but this is still an example of design and the designer. This doesn't explain him saying that things were always there. The design, for example, they say, was always there. You know, the design in creation, which it was always there. It had no beginning.
Nothing can be created from nothing. Something has to create something. And God was already there. So He created us.
Well, they say, well, there is no creation. It just always was there. This world, matter.
When you ask
the components of matter, you know, the atoms, etc., they always were there.
When you ask them whether the chicken came first or the egg came first. So if they say the chicken came first, then you say, how did you get the egg? So that question of egg and chicken, you can give them.
But does that solve it? They say, no problem. The egg came from a chicken that came from an egg that came from a chicken that came from an egg. There was always chickens and eggs around.
You can give him the example of the infinity theory. You can say that Aristotle, he rejected that theory because theoretically, if you have to get, like the example you gave yesterday, if you have to get from where you're sitting to the door, you need to walk 50 steps. But if you go on dividing that by 2, by half, then you'll never get a 0. No, it'll just, so that means you actually never get to the door. It'll just go on, it'll become minus. It's not logical to imagine that because you actually can get to the door.
Okay, if we're saying then from this that the concept of infinity is a theory, a theoretical concept, which has no support in the real world that we live. In the real world that we live, everything has a beginning. The idea that things don't have any beginning, this is only in the mathematical, theoretical world. Right? So this is one response, what the sister has mentioned, right? So we point out to them that this idea of infinity, do you have an example in the world? Because for you to conclude this, right, we conclude from observation. Have you observed anything through your senses? Because this is going to be a scientist or of some sort, right, who says, I judge things according to, reason and logic and science and what's real and okay. So he says, no, these things have no beginning. Can you give me an example of something in this world around us without a beginning that you have observed as not having a beginning? No. Everything that is observable has beginnings. So this idea of not having a beginning, it comes from mathematics. Infinity, this is a mathematical, theoretical concept. It's not real. infinity is not real. So to say that things have no beginning, they always were there, it means that if it had no beginning, we would not be here. That's the other one. This is the one that Aristotle argued, right? If it had no beginning, we couldn't be here. Because it would take an infinite amount of time to get here. So, that's the same as saying we would never get here. The very fact that we are here now is proof that there was a beginning. Our existence is proof there was a beginning. Remember that we discussed yesterday? Right? So we point out to them infinity concepts. This is theoretical. It's not from the real world. It's from the world of mathematics. What you can do with numbers, you can try to apply that in the real world. It doesn't work. Numbers are not a perfect description of reality. They describe an aspect of reality, and to that degree that it works, we use it. But to the degree it doesn't work, we leave it. As we talked about going to the door, right? We leave that one. Though mathematically it's correct, we leave it. So similarly, the infinity concept is a mathematical theory. It is not real. The real world doesn't support it. Okay? Next question to the sisters. The sister who has not answered a question. You have another suggestion? Go ahead.
You said that since we are here, so we need to have a beginning. But if we counter answers that you Muslims, you believe in God and that He has no beginning. So if there is a God, then even He should have some beginning. So how do we say that? Because
well, okay, if we said, if they raised the issue about God, and we talked about that before, that He had a beginning, right? We are saying created things have beginnings. Created things. We already said that these created things could not exist without an uncreated being bringing them into existence. If that uncreated being was himself created, then he would be like the rest of us, in need of a creator who was uncreated. Is that clear? If they say, well, even your God must be created. No, we say He is not included when we say everything must have a beginning. We talk about every created thing must have a beginning. That is the nature of created things, that they have beginnings. And their beginning, what started them to exist, had to be uncreated itself. Otherwise, it is within the same circle of created things, in need of a creator. You're going to answer the next question, or you have a comment?
Can you use the argument, the law of conservation of energy, that is, the energy can neither be created, thus like God is not created?
Well, the law of conservation of energy, that energy can neither be created nor destroyed.
For the sake of argument, I accept up to that. That is, I will not accept that is energy is not created by God. For human beings, energy can not be created.
Okay. What about it?
Can I use that argument
to show that
God has no creation?
Well, no, it's difficult. I mean, how are we going to use that argument? Because we don't agree with that argument. Energy was created and it will be destroyed.
Energy cannot be created by human beings.
Okay. Energy can't be created by human beings. So what?
So that that's like if it is not possible for human beings to create energy, that's like God has no creation.
No, I don't think this is a good argument for that, really. This doesn't, because we're using something that we don't believe in. And the fact that they accept energy can neither be created nor destroyed, that supports their idea that there are things in existence which have no beginning. Right? Energy and other things. And that goes now to the world as a whole. That yes, the world as a whole doesn't have a beginning. That's their argument. But our argument is no. Energy can be created and it will be destroyed. The only existence which is uncreated is God. Okay? Did you answer? Go ahead.
Excuse me, brother. I just have a small doubt regarding this. Since we are talking about everything has a beginning, if we were to give an example, can we give an example of the formation of a baby? Saying that a person who wants a child, it takes time. It just doesn't pop up from somewhere. There are certain ways. So everything starts. It doesn't just come by itself. Can we give that as an example?
Of things having beginnings?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, there are so many examples we can take, you know. Whether it is that or even, you know, even the egg from the chicken or anything really around us. Even the table that we're sitting at. Did the table not have a beginning? There was a time when there was no table and somebody had to put that table together. Yeah. Ourselves and all the things around us had beginnings. Yeah. Okay, will you answer the next question now? The next question is to males, right? Have you have not answered a question before?
No.
Okay. No, save it, okay? We can carry on. What would be your answer to an atheist who said that this world came about by chance?
I can say about the Big Bang theory. That is at one point there is a matter, then it exploded. The Big Bang theory I can counter with the Big Bang theory.
Well, he said that the world came about by chance. He didn't say the Big Bang theory or anything. How do you respond to his statement, this world came about by chance?
I can respond by how can by chance that exploded and our earth comes and it tilts to 23.5 degrees so that the night and day comes, and how can by everything by chance that it happens? If it is not exceeds the 23.5 degree, we cannot get the hot and cold conditions.
Well, the thing is, you know, try to answer according to the question. Because what if after you went through all that explanation, this person says to you, actually, I don't believe in the Big Bang theory. No, then you've just wasted all that time, okay? Because there are other people who have other ideas. You know, Big Bang theory is not the only theory out there. It's maybe the most popular one, but there are other explanations, right? So Hawkins had a different explanation, that it's a, you know, expansion and coming, you know, contraction and expansion and contraction, just continually going on like that. So the point is that he said chance. What you deal with then is chance producing design. So your answer should come from that perspective.
I can use that Mona Lisa example. That is a painting that if you throw a paint, it cannot produce the Mona Lisa at every time. It can. There is no chance. And I can use that argument of mathematics that we cannot reach 0 point.
Okay. The simple question is that the person is saying that this world came about by chance. You say to them that chance, for chance to produce design everywhere, is no way. If you even argue that chance can produce design occasionally, because we did say you throw paint against the wall and it could look like a hand, could look like a head, some little, you know, design accidentally. This does happen. This is real. We have to admit that. But everywhere, this is our point. Everywhere and in everything, no. Chance producing design would be only occasional. It means the mass of this world should be without design, and we will find design only in a few places. If he argues, no, it's okay, the chance could produce design everywhere, okay, then that's when you bring your bucket of paint, throwing it against the wall, right? Then how many times when you throw the bucket against the wall does it produce a design? Right? It should produce a design every time. Right? Every accidental thing you do should produce some design. But that's not what we find in the real world. Real world is that most of the times there is no design. Design is only occasional. So therefore, his argument that the whole world with everything designed in it came as a result of chance is illogical. That's all we can come back to him from and say it's illogical. Well, he says that's what I believe. Okay, that's what you believe. We have to leave you there. Right? Here is what we call, we say to them, this is the point where you now have blind faith. What you accuse us of being blind, here's your blind faith. Because logic doesn't agree with you. Yeah? Logic and reason says no. But you say, but that's what I believe. That's your blind faith. Okay? Good. Yeah, to the sisters. The brother had a comment. Go ahead.
We say that God is uncreated, so God has got no beginning. And they say that universe is uncreated. The atheist says universe is uncreated, so universe has got no beginning. How do you explain this?
Well, we explained that already, that God and the universe are not the same. God and the universe are not the same. One is created, the other one is uncreated. And we said, how did we come to that conclusion? How did Aristotle, how did Plato come to that conclusion? Because of the fact that if the world is uncreated, right, without beginning, the things within it we see being created, being made, being formed. Everything is not static. If we say the world is uncreated in its origin, but everything in it is not static. Things are coming into being all the time. Everything around us is coming into being, having beginnings. So it is illogical to conclude from the things around us, if all of the components seem to have beginnings, it is illogical to conclude that the whole thing didn't have a beginning. It's logical to conclude, since everything we see around us has beginnings, then the whole thing must also have a beginning. That is the logical conclusion. So the person says, well, what about God? Why don't you want to put God there? We say, because if God had a beginning, then he would be part of the world, in need of something to start the whole thing going. So that's why we conclude that God is different from the world. Right? Okay? Okay, next question from the sisters now. Somebody who hasn't answered. Can we pass the mic to somebody who hasn't answered, please? If it's with somebody, just hold up the mic so I know you ready? Okay. How would you reply to the atheist who says, if God is able to do all things, could he create a stone which is too heavy for him to lift?
Can you repeat the question?
If God is able to do all things, right? God is able to do all things. You believe that, right? Do you believe that or not?
Yes.
Inna Allaha ala kulli shayin qadir. Allah is able to do all things. Okay. Can God create a stone which is too heavy for him to lift?
Saying that would be like God is deficient. I mean, he creates something that he can't lift. He's all powerful, he can do anything. But if he does that, that would be like proving that he's got some deficiency in him. So then he ceases to be God then.
Okay. So what are you saying? He can't do it or he can do it?
He can do it but will not do it.
He can do it but will not do it. Okay. Alhamdulillah, that was, a good attempt at resolving it. The main way, the best way to deal with this type of a question is we say to them, and this is what the sister was saying, that when we say God is able to do all things, we mean all things which are godly, not things which will make him no longer God. Right? Not things which will make him no longer God. These are what we call absurdities. If you say that God is without beginning, that's his quality. To ask, can God have a beginning? Can God be born? That is nonsensical. You already said that he is without beginning. So to ask, can he have a beginning, is contradictory. It is a nonsensical question. We call these the absurdities. So we don't attribute to God absurdities, things which will make him no longer God. Okay? So that's the way we end that argument. And this argument actually was used by the atheist scientists of the Renaissance, against the Christian philosophers. This is how they threw them into a quandary, how to answer that, right? Because they were already using the idea of God having a son based on the same theory, that God is able to do all things. That's what you may find a Christian asking you. Well, don't you believe God is able to do all things? Why couldn't he have a son? You understand? So this is why being able to answer the atheist enables you now, empowers you to answer the Christian's argument in that case also. Okay? So, as she said, to say that he is, to create a stone which he is not able to lift would be to imply deficiency with regards to God. I mean that he's no longer God, because God is the greatest. Nothing greater than he. Right? So, such a creation is absurd. Absurd. Next question to one of the brothers who has not answered a question.
Excuse me, brother.
Yes, sister.
Can't we say the question in itself contradicts itself, because the person just agreed that God can do everything. I mean, he started, that's how the atheist starts. You agree that God can do everything, but then he says, can he do this which he will not be able to do? So the question in itself contradicts.
No. The atheist is going to say to you, do you believe that God is able to do all things? Or he just makes the statement, since you believe that God is able to do all things, can he make a stone which is too heavy for him to lift? So that question works. It works. But we respond to them that that question is an absurd question because of the fact that you're asking whether God can do something which makes him no longer God. You see, that is absurd. Can God be no longer God? God is God. So that is an absurd question. Question number 8. Is this on to one of the brothers who has not answered a question? If an atheist claimed that God is a figment of human imagination, what would your response be?
First of all, it is that we can't imagine God. We can't have imagination of God as being compared to human beings. We can't compare him to anyone because...
No, the question, what is the question? The question is that the atheist says to you that really God is a product of human imagination. He doesn't really exist. We just made him up. This is what Freud and Durkheim and others claim. Human beings made up the concept of God. God is a figment of our imagination, not real.
No, but we can say that it is norm to have the nature of human beings to believe in God, and secondly we can prove from the concept of God, from the scriptures as well as even logically the existence of God.
Okay, I would say that the fact that the vast majority of human beings, this is where we bring the ijma argument here. If it were the imagination of human beings, then we would find it not a consistent belief everywhere. It wouldn't be consistent. The fact that human beings everywhere you go in the world have this belief indicates that there must be some reality to it. There must be some reality to it. So the one who says it is our imagination, we say, no, it is your imagination that there is no God. We turn it around. It is your imagination that there is no God. The rest of the world is convinced that there is a God. And we have proof. We're not basing it merely on wishes and whims, desires. It's based on proof. And then he will ask you, okay, what is your proof? And then you go into the proof. Right? Okay? And one thing to keep in mind, that though science claims to establish its facts by proofs, when you look at the reality of the proofs, they are not concrete but by inference. They're things which infer, right? They are concluding from something. For example, magnetism, right? This is a fact of science. Science works with magnetism. It calculates its power and its strength and the magnetic forces between the atoms and, between planets and the gravity of the earth and all these other forces which are related to the magnetic force. But nobody has seen magnetic force. They only know it by inference, by how it acts on other things. They conclude that it exists. So the idea that we believe in God by concluding from design, concluding from things having beginnings around us, is just as scientific as the scientific method of proving things in general. Okay, so don't think of it as being, yes, it's a logical argument, but it is the basis of science. It is the basis of science. So much. If you look at all of the major theories, which have now become facts, or they consider them to be scientific facts, you'll find at the base of them some elements of inference. This is inferred. This is implied. We have understood this from that.
We can give the example of the breeze. That the person, when the breeze is coming, he had to accept that breeze is there. You can't imagine the breeze, how it is and how it is. Example of breeze.
The breeze.
Yeah. So we can explain that now. You can not see the breeze, but you have to accept that the breeze is there.
Yeah, you feel the effects.
Yeah,
you see the
effects of the breeze.
Yes, breeze is a good example also. The wind.